infectious diseases, research, medicine, health. Welcome to Outbreak News Interviews. And now, broadcasting from the Outbreak News Skylar Studios in beautiful West Central Florida, here is your host, microbiologist and editor of OutbreakNewsToday.com, Robert Harriman.
Well, hey everybody, this is Robert, and welcome to Outbreak News Interviews. And, no interview tonight. Instead, I'm going to give my thoughts on a topic that can be very touchy and can be very controversial. Now, earlier this week, former Texas Congressman and retired physician Dr. Ron Paul and his co-host Daniel McAdams did a show on the Ron Paul Liberty Report on state-mandated or compulsory vaccines and the latest on the Dr. Bob Sears case. And if you want to know more about that case, you can find that on the website OutbreakNewsToday.com. Well, let me go ahead and play about a minute segment from the beginning of the show that they did so you can see where they're coming from, and then I'll talk about that a little bit more after this segment.
We're going to be talking about medicine a little bit today and vaccinations. So we want to keep people happy and well. That's right. So I want to deal a little bit today with the issue of compulsory vaccinations. That's a big issue. You know, a lot of supporters we have are very attuned to this. And I remember in the campaign, this was a big issue, about being forced to it. And the issue was both medical and government force. First, do we need all these vaccinations for our kids? Are they dangerous? Do they cause problems? And the other thing was, who makes these decisions? Is it the government that makes these decisions, or is this an issue of liberty? And most people thought it was an issue of liberty. It sort of reminds me of what came up in the campaigns when we talked about the right for people to drink raw milk. Oh, well, it's for your safety, and we have to take care of you and tell you what you put in your body and this sort of thing. At the same time, it was the government that was going to tell you you can't do this. Well, vaccinations are something like that too, because they're overregulated now, and people are upset about what we can put into our bodies. In this case, it's the parents who are responsible for small children making decisions. And obviously, in a free society, a decent moral society, we still believe that the state does not own the children, and that the parents should. At least they get the benefit of the doubt, unless there's some very unusual thing. But parents, make the decision.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and link to the full YouTube show on the website, OutbreakNewsToday.com, if you want to check out what everything they had to say. But now, I've been a big supporter of Dr. Paul for many years, decades in fact, and agree with him on many issues to include fiscal, monetary, and foreign policy. And you can tell this from the articles I've written over the years on our sister website, theglobaldispatch.com. However, on a few issues, compulsory vaccines included, we do part ways. Now, while the government has clearly overstretched its boundaries in many, many areas, I believe this important issue of public health is a justified role, and that mandatory vaccinations are both necessary and desirable. In this case, individual rights may need to yield to the state's police power in order to preserve the public health and safety. Now, claims of personal freedom understandably and deservedly carry great weight in this country. However, to me, one of the most basic principles of liberty is that a person's freedom does not justify infringing injury on others. And that is exactly what not getting vaccinated does. Now, those who fail to vaccinate their children are unnecessarily risking that their children will be exposed to communicable diseases that can have serious and even fatal consequences. Those that aren't vaccinated also can spread communicable diseases to others in society who can't be vaccinated. Those that are unvaccinated are at increased risk of measles and pertussis, and they can infect others that are too young to be vaccinated. They can't be or others that can't be vaccinated because of different medical reasons. Or were vaccinated, maybe they didn't have a sufficient immunologic response. Now, I believe going unvaccinated exposes others to risk, and to me, this violates their rights. In addition, compulsory vaccination is therefore justified because non-vaccination can rightly be prohibited, just as other kinds of harmful and risky conduct are rightly prohibited. It is morally similar to firing a weapon into the air and endangering innocent bystanders. Communicable diseases like measles and polio and diphtheria were once rampant in this country, but mandatory vaccination laws that started decades ago have either eliminated or virtually eliminated them. I realize some people look at measles as a mild illness, which I don't want to spend time arguing about right at this moment. But what if a more serious contagious pathogen like diphtheria, which has a much higher fatality rate, were to spread like some of these measles outbreaks because parents or doctors decided the Tdap for their child wasn't necessary? The overall case fatality rate for diphtheria is about 5 to 10%, and even higher for the very young and the very old. Or what if the Haemophilus influenza B or HIV vaccine wasn't being given on a mandatory basis? Before its introduction a few decades ago, 20,000 children in the United States under 5 got Haemophilus influenza B disease, meningitis or sepsis or whatever, and about 5% of them died. I mean, this has been a godsend to young children and pediatricians and parents. And look at the outbreaks of measles happening in Europe today. Is this what we want to see here? I mean, no pun intended, but we're not immune to this if vaccinations are not taken seriously. And just as a side thought, not so much on the philosophy, but investigating these outbreaks put a great personnel and financial strain on public health departments. This is something that could be avoided, and something that I would think people that are fiscally conservative would stand by. Remember the Minnesota measles outbreak last year? Those 79 mostly children that were infected? You know how much that cost the health department up there? $2.3 million for the 5-month outbreak. Now, libertarian professor and philosopher Jason Brennan once said, "I argue that people who refuse vaccinations violate the clean hands principle, a moral principle that prohibits people from participating in the collective imposition of unjust harm or risk of harm. In a libertarian framework, individuals may be forced to accept certain vaccines not because they have an enforceable duty to serve the common, and not because of the cost-benefit analysis that recommends it, but because anti-vaxxers are wrongfully imposing undue harm upon others." Now, I know that there's some of you out there that are going to disagree with this, and disagree fiercely, but I do appreciate you listening to my point of view. If you are worried you have Lyme disease, or just like the outdoors, and want the peace of mind of knowing whether you have Lyme disease or not, there is a new Lyme screening test based on decades of research by Dr. Richard Marconi, a professor at VCU Medical Center. For more information, visit glymedx.com. That's glymedx.com. Or email at info@glymedx.com.